the trade deadline gave us was another unexpected trade, that the Rams acquire Von Miller. We were on live when that happened. We were like, "Whoa!" You even said when because you said there's been a trade. Von Miller's been traded.
Yeah, you're right in the middle of something, and I was like, "Hey, breaking news!"
And your first line, TJ, was, "What?" You even said, like, what? And then we find out it's the Rams, and then I just went for it and sung the praises of this man who's kind enough to call into the program right now. On the Mercedes-Benz van phone line from the Los Angeles Rams, the general manager, Les Snead, back here on the show. How are you doing, Les?
I'm good, and because you went for it, Rich, I probably got more text with the, if you want to call it the highlight of your show after you went for it. Than I've ever gotten before.
Are you? Are you?
I'll let your audience go from there. Let their mind wander.
Well, I mean, I mentioned how you walk regularly, even though church bells are involved. And as a matter of fact, Les, I think we have exclusive audio of you getting on the phone today. There it is. Right there. Is that what you're referring to, Les? Right there?
You know what? I all the memes that my teenagers sent me were similar, or even more graphic.
Oh my gosh! I'm sorry, and I'm also very proud of myself. I'll be very honest with you at the same time, Les. So
you know what? You're a creative.
Thank you, sir.
So I'm sure that's in the wheelhouse. and you know, being a creative. The last time we chatted, it seems like it was my wife's birthday, yes. And you know, you admitted maybe the bias that you have based on the relationships, but yes. I'm not sure that your listeners do know that probably the last time you and I chatted, yes. We weren't really chatting. I was listening to you, like really do a really good, probably rendition of Neil Diamond.
Yes, I did.
Yes, karaoke kind of birthday.
I worked out of my wheelhouse that night. Yeah, usually it's just Sinatra, but I was going for it back in June when you're. Well, I guess that's another line from a Sinatra song, but man, I just couldn't believe that trade. So let's just jump right into it, if you don't mind. How did this start? Do you bring up Von Miller to the Broncos? I mean, is that what it is? Where you had made another trade with them? Did you bring it up then? I know I'm asking 15 questions at one, but
I think you're correct in because George Denver, you know, they had. Wow, have they been hit at linebacker? And it seems like, you know, every game, one or two were going down. So I know when we were discussing the Kenny Young thing, you know, I did bring up, hey, George, I know we're probably not doing a Von Miller for Kenny Young trade, but based on maybe some rumors out there based on him being in the last year of his contract, based on where they asked, hey, are y'all thinking of moving Von? And George said, hey, why don't we do this? Let's get through the Kenny Young thing, and then over the next few days, if that is the case, I'll circle back with you. And it does seem like at the end of last week, George circled back. So that conversation did lead to Von being a Ram.
And then the compensation involved money, obviously, because of the draft choices that you gave up, being a second and a third for next year's draft, and the money that Denver's putting towards the remainder of his contract. Is that how that works? That if they had tossed less money towards his contract, the draft choices would have been less than?
Yeah, I think that is true. There's kind of a sliding scale. Mm-hmm. Per se, when us general managers are chatting based on contracts like that and how much a team takes on, you know, and what the compensation would be. So you're exactly right. There is a sliding scale. And that was the interesting thing about this trade, because we were very upfront with George from the beginning, right? For us to be able to take on Von based on our cap situation and things like that, they were going to have to be willing to do that. And obviously they were in the end, but not saying it was a deal breaker, but it was somewhat of a deal breaker based on our situation.
Les Snead, general manager of the LA Rams, fresh off of the Von Miller acquisition right here on the Rich Eisen Show. Now let's get to the church bells part here. I mean, you're giving up a ton of draft capital, Les, not just for Vaughn, but in addition to what you coughed up for Matthew Stafford, Jalen Ramsey to get here as well. At any point in time, do you sit down, look at the ledger, and go, what am I doing? Seriously, I mean, at any point,
we'll definitely do that. If I like to say a one-liner, we do use. We definitely value draft picks, and I like to say often, hey, we just use them in innovative ways. But when you do sit down and really look at that ledger you're talking about, just quickly, over the last 5 years, we haven't had a first-round pick, but we've done a lot of maneuvering. We do a lot of trading back. We acquire a lot of picks. We use the comp formula. So we have probably had the third or fourth most draft picks of any team in the previous 5 years, even though we hadn't had a first. So that's the past. So you're always all right. The ledger, you got to look at the future. Like in this situation too, Rich, we knew coming into this year we're going to get a third round comp for Brad Holmes becoming the GM of the Detroit Lions, and we expect to get 4 more compensatory picks based on players that we lost last year, like a John Johnson, starting with him, and a host of others. So with that being said, we were expecting, even though we traded those picks, 8 picks in this year's draft. So we're always kind of looking at the past, the future, what we need to do, how we best utilize those picks. And our model does allow us to acquire picks via, whether it's the comp formula or it's trading back in the draft.
So what about just, passing it up the chain of command for you, just to say, hey, we're going to give up more picks? I mean, do you have to do that, or do you have the full green light?
You definitely have to do that, or I would say this: whether it's a half, it's actually a philosophy I believe in, right? Mm-hmm. That obviously Sean and I work together, but working with Kevin Demoff and Stan Kroenke are making sure, right, they're in the loop, making sure they know what the intentions are, and also what the ramifications are, and here's the why behind it, and like you said, here's the ledger moving forward, and with that being said, we're always, I always say the draft's very important to us. Mm-hmm. And we believe in utilizing every round of the draft. We believe in collecting as many picks as possible. That way you obviously get more players. You get a mutual fund, right? It's like a venture capitalist. You have more chance to have successes, and it takes a symbiotic relationship with the coaching staff where we can say, as just a picture to paint it, right? We can let a really good player like John Johnson move on, and we will probably recruit a 4th-round comp for him and then replace him with a player that we drafted in the 6th round. So that takes a very symbiotic relationship with the coaching staff, knowing exactly the type of players they need, believing in them and their ability to develop the players, and those coaches having the courage to say, yes, let's roll with Jordan Fuller and move on from John. And that's just the way the NFL works.
And before we move on to the actual Von Miller, scheme and what's to be done with him now and for the future, Les Snead, last one for you on just this whole subject about roster maneuvering and valuing draft picks and trading a lot of them for real deal people right here, right now. I'm sure you've heard also in the media the conversation that, boy, this just proves the Rams are all in for this year. And I'm sure you laugh at something like that. Like, every year you're like, what, we're only halfway in. We're fine if we just reach the divisional round. I mean, like, of course you want to win the Super Bowl every year. That said, this sure looks like every single chip that you have at your disposal is now pushed right to the middle of the table to make sure you do what the Bucs did last year, which is win it in your own building. Would you agree with that based on this acquisition?
We're very aware of where we're at right now. And what's interesting, right, we've got 7 wins, but we're the 5th seed, and right now we're traveling, in the wild card round to play. So we still have work to do to win a division and to get, try to vie for that bye. So we're always aware of where we're at. And toward the end of the season, based on how you're playing, injuries, there's realistic expectations. But, Rich, I often say our vision's not to build something to just win one game. It's to build something to win a lot of games and as many as possible. And when you're able to do that, right, you're able to put yourself in position to, right, if you want to call it, ski for the gold medal. But similar to our last 5 years with Sean, we have the third most wins of any team. So I only say that to say, yes, every year is important, but also we also look at, the bigger picture, the longer term, and it's not just 1 year, but we hope to do it many years.
Does that mean you could even go into your ledger and envision Von Miller sticking around, Stan?
I know we did when we made the trade, based on the position he plays, based on his pedigree, based on, right, you can watch it. He's not necessarily losing a step. And a lot of times players of his caliber, right, they got more gears than most. So even as they age and they lose a gear, they're still 1 or 2 gears ahead. So we did talk with Von and his representation about making this a little more than 1 year, but we all agreed let's get through the next 48, 72 hours, transition Von here, and then go from there on that.
So oh, wow.
Yes, he's definitely going to help us this year. We'd like to have him help us next year and the years into the future as well.
So it's not – I thought you were going to go, let's just get through this season. Like you're willing to start talking about this right now for Von.
We're definitely willing to start talking about it, sooner than later. That's been a vision, and we communicated that with his representation, and we agreed to do that.
What was that phone call with Sean like to say, hey, by the way, yeah, we got Von Miller? What was that like for you, Les?
Well, the phone call, once Sean realized it was realistic, he checked in on the hour every hour. But I do remember the first conversation I had with him.
Yeah,
he was like, I think he used the quote with our media, you're, and then you can add, you're, bleep, bleep, bleep me.
Yeah.
And based on that was, hey, we got a chance to get Von Miller. And, oh, by the way, how do we pay for that? Well, they're willing to do their part in helping us with that based on that sliding scale we talked about before. So once he knew I wasn't pulling some type of Halloween prank or April Fool's early prank on him, he was all in.
So then, what's the scheme? What can you reveal? Like, what's the hell is this going to look like? I mean, this is crazy. But what do you envision?
Well, I think that it'll be interesting what it will look like. But what we do know is, and what we found out over the last couple of years is, obviously when you have Aaron Donald, a lot of teams are going to try to do their best to make sure he doesn't wreck the game. And a lot of times, just hey, there's 5 offensive linemen. And there's running backs and tight ends and let's call it the eligibles that can go out. So with Aaron, a lot of times teams you'll hear people say slide protect, right? They're going to slide a side of the line to Aaron. So there's often 2 and 3 hands on Aaron, and that line's kind of taking care of Aaron's side. Well, when we had Leonard Floyd on the other side, teams could maybe use a tight end or running back, even a wide receiver to chip, double team Floyd. So what it's going to do by adding this third piece is it's definitely going to stress and put pressure on how, let's call it the offensive staff plans to come up with their protection schemes on those Tuesday nights. And then it's also going to stress and pressure them, during the game, because now you're not just trying to take 2 away. You're definitely game planning for 3 instead of 2 right now.
And then, of course, everything's local, just like politics and real estate, right? And building rosters, too. You make a deal like this figuring, okay, this helps get Kyler on the ground. Russ, when his pin is removed from his finger. Lance, if that's somebody who we got to see, right? That's what this...
That's a great point. In our division, especially with Kyler and Russell, you've got to stop them from beating you passing the ball. And, oh, by the way, they got that extra pitch in there, or their next extra club in their golf bag,
Right.
and that's being able to escape and beat you with their legs. And having athletes over the years, we've had some success with those players when we have those type of athletes that can run east to west, and not necessarily stop them, but contain them. And obviously having Vaughn on the other side helps that as well.
All right, Les, my kids are catching the ball in the backyard, 13, 10, and 8, so they might be available for your next first-round draft choice. I'll keep them practicing, for that eventuality,
Yeah, that's it. You know what? We hadn't gone to the ledger then, but we'll look into the future and kind of see how that looks. And
okay,
but it does seem like that's a different Rams team. The Eisen kids, you know what? The next Cooper Cup.
That's right, Cooper Eisen. It's the next Cooper Cup. Don't forget that. It's our house, Eisen House. That's what I want them to start screaming in SoFi at some point in time. But
I bet you I have gray hair by then.
Yeah, very good. You'll still have hair, I know that. Hey, Les, thanks for the time, man. Appreciate it. Congrats on the deal. Let's do this again.
All right, appreciate it, Rich.
It's Les Snead, everybody, general manager of the Los Angeles Rams. Hey, you watched all the way to the end. Thanks for that. Watch more right here.